Hey guys, welcome back to the video. I'm Luke, an ACA qualified accountant, having passed all 15 of my ACA exams at the first attempt while studying at a Big Four firm. And then after my time at the Big Four, I transitioned into a career within investment banking, and I now spend my time helping current ACA candidates pass their exams. And in today's video, we're going to discuss some tips and some advice to help you pass the tax compliance professional level ACA exam. TC is an interesting one. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Some candidates don't mind it and find it one of the more straightforward professional level exams, whereas other candidates find it really challenging and see it as kind of being on par with the likes of FAR and BPT. So everyone has a bit of a different opinion on it. Personally, I think it lies somewhere in the middle. It has its challenging ideas and challenging concepts, but I don't think it's quite as challenging as a financial accounting and reporting, and I certainly don't see it as challenging as BPT. BPT is the next tax exam you're going to face after tax compliance, and for me, that's the most challenging exam on the qualification. It builds upon everything you learn at the certificate level when you study towards principles of tax. So there it was more about knowledge and just gaining an understanding of basic tax principles. Now at the professional level, we're going to start applying everything you learn there. So it's not necessarily just about knowledge now, it's about application. That's how professional level differs to the certificate level. And people tend to do quite well in this exam. It's got pretty decent pass rates for a professional level paper. Hopefully some of the tips and the advice that I'm going to run through in this video will help focus and sharpen your study and revision strategy, and will make you feel a lot more confident walking into the exam on exam day. So yeah, let's get started. My first piece of advice when it comes to doing well in the tax compliance exam is to refresh your memory of everything you studied at the certificate level in the principles of tax exam. So like I said in the intro, everything in tax compliance builds upon principles of tax. So you need to be cognizant of the fact that everything you learn and study towards for that exam is examinable again here. So if you found a way to coast through or wing the principles of tax exam, now is the time where you really actually need to develop a fundamental understanding of tax rules, tax application, and the frameworks that underpin it, because this isn't a knowledge-based exam, this is an application-based exam. You need to show to the examiner that you have an understanding of how tax works. Review your notes from principles of tax and make sure those fundamentals and those basics are solid, because your teachers, whatever kind of course or prep provider you're using, aren't really going to go through principles of tax and all that knowledge again. They're going to start assuming that that's all assumed knowledge. So if you're not feeling completely comfortable with everything you learned in principles of tax, and maybe you just scrape the pass, I would recommend you definitely go back and refresh your memory before you even start studying towards anything tax compliance related, because you need to have those fundamentals in place. Tax compliance syllabus doesn't reteach anything that was learned at principles of tax. It just builds on top of that. It's building layers on top of everything you learn at the certificate level. And yeah, everything you learn in principles of tax is completely examinable again here. So if you're not comfortable with that material, I would definitely go back and get comfortable before you open your tax compliance textbook. My second piece of advice when it comes to doing well in the tax compliance exam is when you're answering exam questions, to make sure you're clear on whether you're advising an individual or a company. Before you put pen to paper and start answering a question in the tax compliance exam, make sure you're 100% clear on whether your client, the person or institution you're advising, is an individual, i.e. a human being, or a company like Amazon, Apple, etc. You need to be completely clear on who you're speaking to, who you're advising, before you start writing your answer. And the reason why is because the tax advice you give to an individual or to a company is completely different. Companies and individuals receive completely different tax treatments. They're subject to completely different taxes. So your answers need to reflect that. You can't be advising an individual but discussing corporation tax. You can't be advising a company and discussing income tax, dividend tax. I recommend drawing up a two-sided revision mind map where the left-hand side details all of the taxes that individuals are subject to, and then on the right-hand side you outline all of the taxes that companies are subject to. So on the left, your individual taxes, you'll have income tax, capital gains, stamp duty land tax, dividend tax, And then on the right hand side, you'll have company taxes, so corporation tax, VAT, etc. Get used to quickly identifying what taxes apply to people and what taxes apply to companies, because this is fundamental. And if you get this mixed up in the exam, you could be answering a question in completely the wrong way, and instead of getting maximum marks, you'll get 0. Because if you're advising a company on individual taxes, everything you'll be writing is completely wrong. So this is the number one reason why candidates fail the tax compliance exam, because they don't have a solid grasp over which taxes apply to which type of legal person. TC is not a multi-choice exam anymore. You can't make an educated guess based on multi-choice options that you're provided by the examiner. It's written response, and you need to show that you understand the difference between all of the different types of taxes. My third piece of advice when it comes to doing well in tax compliance is to manage your time in the exam. Now, time management is a theme that comes up across all 15 of the ACA exams. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I harp on about time management, because these exams can be super time pressured, and particularly when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, the time pressure that you face can really exacerbate all these issues and can lead you to fail the exam. Tax compliance isn't the most time pressured ACA exam, I would say. It's not as time pressured as a FAR, a BPT or a corporate reporting, but you do still need to manage your time carefully here. There are 5 main questions or requirements that you need to address in the tax compliance exam. So I suggest plan out your timings before you start. So when you open the exam paper, you'll see the marks allocated to each question. You need to calculate how much time and how many minutes you have to address each requirement. That's the first thing you do when you open the tax compliance paper, just so you're clear and you have a good outline as to how much time you have to address each question. Stick to those timings. You cannot deviate from your timings in an ACA exam. If you answer requirement 1 and you've got to the end of your time allocation, but you haven't fully answered the question, it doesn't matter. You have to move on straight away, because there are easy marks available for requirement 2, 3, 4 and 5 that you'll miss out on if you run out of time. And make sure you answer every single sub-requirement. Don't leave any marks on the table. Make sure you've answered every single question in the tax compliance exam. Candidates that answer every single sub-requirement automatically will have a better probability of passing this exam, because there will be some candidates that run out of time and don't answer everything. So even if you're not a master of tax, even if you don't know everything about the tax compliance syllabus and you're not completely confident, if you manage to answer every single sub-requirement, your probability of passing will increase. You aren't up against the clock like you are in a FAR or a BPT, but you are still under a lot of time pressure, and if you mess up your timings, this paper could go really wrong for you. So don't leave easy marks on the table. Stick to your time allocations and answer every single sub-requirement. The next thing I want to discuss is the importance of not skipping any tax area during your revision phase. It's really important to get a deep, thorough understanding of all of the different taxes that are included within the tax compliance syllabus. Every tax can appear in the exam and will appear somewhere in some form. So you need to be completely comfortable with every kind of tax. During your revision phase, make sure you have a deep, thorough understanding of all of the different taxes that are included within the workbook. Don't neglect any of them. Make sure you're comfortable with every single type of tax for both individuals and corporations, because in one way or another they're going to come up and they're going to be tested. You need to know how to calculate and explain the tax treatments for all of the core taxes, so income tax, corporation tax, capital gains, stamp duty land tax, VAT and inheritance tax. So all of those taxes that I've just listed off, you need to know them well. You can't just have a surface understanding, you need to have a deep understanding. You need to be prepared for all kinds of eventualities here. Even a topic and a tax like stamp duty land tax, which traditionally carries a low amount of marks, could randomly in one exam carry 15 to 20 marks. You need to have a really deep and thorough understanding of even the more peripheral taxes, not just the core taxes like corporation tax and income tax. My next tip is to understand how taxes interact. Now, one of the ways that tax compliance builds upon principles of tax and adds an additional layer of complexity is the fact that taxes often overlap. The key interactions that are covered at tax compliance are CGT and inheritance tax. These two taxes often arise at the same time, and stamp duty and CGT. These two taxes again tend to be triggered at similar points in time. So for example, a share sale on an individual's death will incur both capital gains and inheritance tax, and also share disposals will incur stamp duty and CGT. So you need to be cognizant of the fact that different events could trigger multiple taxes. So when you're reading through a question or reading through a scenario, be cognizant of the fact that a certain event could trigger multiple taxes, not necessarily just one. The examiner could be looking to test your knowledge of multiple taxes across just one requirement or sub-requirement. If 2 or more taxes are triggered, then you need to articulate how and why and give explanations for both taxes, not just one. The examiner will be awarding marks for both. And again, this is where tax compliance builds upon principles of tax. Principles of tax is more fundamental, it's more calculation based, whereas tax compliance is adding that discussion element and is really testing your understanding of tax frameworks. These types of crossover questions are designed to test real world thinking, and they're often where the strongest candidates earn those extra marks. My 6th piece of advice: if you get stuck in the tax compliance exam, you get stuck on a calculation, just make an assumption and move on. Don't freeze if you forget the tax rule. There's so many niche peripheral tax rules that you'll come across in tax compliance, you can't know them all. So in an exam, when you're answering a question and you get a bit stuck halfway through the computation, just make up an assumption and move on. You will be awarded follow-through marks. You won't get the answer perfectly right, but you will get follow-through marks. Make a logical assumption, write something down, and keep going. There isn't time to rack your brain and try to remember a niche tax rule from page 400 of the workbook. You just haven't got that time and that mental bandwidth to remember absolutely everything. Even if the assumption you make is completely wrong, you may end up losing half a mark, but you'll still pick up the follow-through mark. So you need to be able to write something down, pluck a number out of your head if you need to, and just keep going with the question. Like I said, you don't need to get 100% in the tax compliance exam. We're aiming for 55. So if you need to make up a logical assumption, just do it if you get stuck. Just keep moving forward through the question. This exam rewards flow and structure more than perfection. Make 2 or even 3 assumptions if you need to, but you need to get to the end of the question. You need to get down a final answer. Even if you know you've made mistakes along the way, don't give up halfway through a question. Keep making progress and get to a final answer, because follow-through marks will get you across the line. It can be difficult for the perfectionists out there to admit they don't know something, and they kind of get stuck for 10-15 minutes trying to remember something from the workbook they saw about 4 weeks ago. But don't do this. Just get something down and keep moving forward, keep progressing through the question. My penultimate piece of advice is to know your ethics. Ethics comes up in every single tax compliance paper. It's usually worth around 7 marks, so it's quite a decent weighting in the overall exam. Ethics in tax is relatively straightforward, and it's repetitive across the tax exams. The ethics content and material that's tested at Principles of Tax is very similar to what's tested in tax compliance and BPT. Similar questions tend to come up time and time again, testing similar topics, tax evasion, money laundering, confidentiality, ethical threats. These kind of questions come up every single tax exam, and they're quite consistent, quite constant. So if you can get comfortable with these topic areas, you should be able to get 5, 6, 7 marks in this area. The ethical questions that you're given in the tax compliance exam are repetitive and they're pretty predictable. So learn the standard steps for each scenario, such as money laundering and tax evasion. Practice writing out your threats and safeguards and get comfortable with that topic, and do a lot of ethics questions. Do all of the ethics questions from the question bank so you're as prepared as possible for the ethics questions you're going to get in the exam. Memorize model answers because they're often reused in the real exam. If you are able to maximize marks on the ethics section of the exam, then you'll be able to focus more of your energy on the technical sections and the technical questions, which are more challenging. Cool, so that's my advice for doing well in the tax compliance exam. To recap, know everything from Principles of Tax. Everything you learn from that exam is fair game here, and it's completely testable. And to be honest with you, all of the knowledge that you need in tax compliance is built upon what you learn from Principles of Tax. So you need to get comfortable with that material. Know if you're advising a person or a company. So know the different tax treatments, the different taxes that those types of legal persons are subject to, and read the questions carefully so you're comfortable and know what kind of taxes that you need to discuss before you start diving in and writing your answer on exam day. Manage your time. Plan out how much time you have for each question in the exam and stick to those timings and don't deviate from them. Cover every tax area in the syllabus. Don't leave any taxes unrevised. Make sure you've done deep work on each of the different taxes, because they all will be tested in one way or another in the tax compliance exam. Be alert to tax overlaps. There are events that can take place which trigger multiple taxes, such as CGT and inheritance tax. So if you feel in an exam that multiple taxes could be involved, then you're probably right. Make assumptions if you get stuck on a quantitative question in the exam. The key is just to get to the end, get a final answer, because you will be awarded follow-through marks. And don't neglect ethics. These are easy, high-value marks. The questions are repetitive. Similar themes are tested across different tax compliance exams. So make sure you do well in that area. If you've got the tax compliance exam, I wish you the best of luck for it. You're going to absolutely smash it. If you like the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. I'm making tons of videos regarding the ACA qualifications, so it'd be great to have you on board for this journey. I'm making courses for all 15 of the exams. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.